3 spine-chilling true accounts of cursed houses. Discover the terrifying secrets exposed. Jenna could hardly believe her life had come to this. As she huddled in the dim light of her living room, paying bills with shaking hands, the shadows in her modest suburban home loomed large. Built years ago by her late husband, it carried whispers of dark misfortunes. Families had vanished within these walls, leaving the house with a haunting reputation. She shoved aside that creeping dread. Her focus was on Tyler and Emma. They needed her strength. But the peaceful veneer began to crack. Now it was not just her exhaustion from late shifts that wore her down, it was the flickering of lights in the hallway, the blood-curdling whispers that echoed eerily when the kids were asleep. Tyler, usually so adventurous, kept talking about a man he swore was lurking outside. Jenna brushed it off, convincing herself it was his imagination, the product of a long day. Emma, however, sat quietly, withdrawn, her gaze almost blank, speaking only in shivers and sighs. What was happening to her family? She supplemented her tiring job at the diner with late-night shifts, desperately clinging to normalcy. But every corner of the home felt alive with something unsettling. She heard the creaking upstairs, saw the shadows darting just outside her vision. When the neighbors offered their help, she was grateful, yet wary of their vague smiles. Could their kindness conceal deeper secrets? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. One evening, while Jenna was stuck scrubbing plates at the diner, Tyler's voice cut through the silence of their home. "Mom, there's someone in the backyard." His words bolted through her like ice water. She dialed her neighbor, a supposed ally with an unsettling history, and he assured her it was only a figment of his imagination. Then her heart dropped as she realized Tyler had vanished from the house. Panic surged within her, tightening her throat. She stumbled home to find the door ajar and shadows creeping within. The whispers intensified, tangling with Jenna's thoughts, making her doubt everything she had ignored. She found Emma curled in a corner, staring at the back door with wide, unblinking eyes. Jenna's breath quickened, fear gripping her heart. As she turned to address her daughter, the air chilled. The house seemed to breathe around her, walls scraped with memories of the families before them. The curse began unfurling its grasp on her.
Jenna felt the eyes upon her, realized that something or someone had been waiting, lurking in the dark spaces. Just then, a cold breeze swept past her, and she froze. Something was definitely waiting. With fearless resolve, she steeled herself. She wouldn't let them take her children, everything, again. Jenna's heart raced as she took a step forward, her mind wrestling with despair and determination. She instinctively reached for Emma, pulling her close. The little girl's body trembled, her wide eyes reflecting terror. The room was thick with something unnatural, a heavy weight that pressed against Jenna's chest. "Tyler, where are you?" she called, but her voice echoed back as a haunting whisper. Instead of reassurance, the walls seemed to absorb her words, suffocating them. They were alone. Each creak of the floorboard sounded like an ominous warning, urging her to turn back, but she couldn't. Deep down, she sensed something was very wrong. The laughter of Tyler, the vibrantness of her son, had vanished into thin air. Only silence filled the spaces he once brightened. Gathering courage, Jenna swept her gaze through the living room. The creeping shadows shifted. They seemed to writhe on their own, morphing into shapes. There was a feeling that kindness from those neighbors masked something sinister, a knowledge of the lurking darkness within these walls that she had failed to grasp. With every instinct screaming at her to flee, Jenna pressed on, crossing through the threshold into the hallway. The air thrummed with chaos, the whispers coiling tighter around her. "Mommy," Emma whimpered, her small voice a knife in the consuming dark. Jenna stopped and knelt down, grasping Emma's shoulders. "Stay close, honey. We'll find Tyler." But as she stood back up, a chill snaked through her limbs, her resolve wavering. Did Tyler run outside looking for help, or had he encountered something far more sinister? The house shifted, shadows stretching and twisting into grotesque forms. Jenna thought she caught movement out of the corner of her eye, but when she looked, Nothing was there, just darkness and the weight of dread. "Tyler," she shouted again, this time more frantic. The silence that followed felt like a slap. Jenna's heart pounded like a drum against her ribcage as panic pushed her forward. She hurried toward the staircase, Emma trailing closely behind, her breath coming in shaky gasps. Every step felt like treading into the unknown. The walls exhaled a stale breath, carrying echoes of past entrapments. Jenna fought back nausea, determined to get to the top. As she reached the landing, she sensed it, the energy of a presence, something alive lurking just beyond sight. It chilled her blood. Something awaited. "Mommy, don't!" Emma squealed, clinging to Jenna's leg, her eyes wild with fear.
For the first time, Jenna noticed something in Emma's expression. Recognition. He's not a good man. "Who?" Jenna pressed, panic sparking urgency in her voice. But before Emma could answer, a shadow flickered at the end of the hallway, melting away into the darkness like smoke. Fear surged through Jenna like venom, clawing at her resolve. Her instincts screamed for her to leave this cursed house, yet Tyler's absence was a siren call. With a deep breath, Jenna stepped into the corridor, each heartbeat louder than the silence surrounding her. She needed answers, and there was only one way to get them. The whispers crescendoed, swirling into a deafening howl that echoed through her mind. She felt a pull, like invisible strings yanking her toward the open door of the attic at the far end. Something was up there, something terrible. Suddenly, a loud thud reverberated from above, followed by schoolyard laughter, Tyler's laughter. Jenna's heart twisted. It seeped through the cracks in her fear, igniting hope. "Tyler!" she shouted, rushing toward the attic door. The whispers grew louder, drowning her thoughts, pulling her away. As she reached for the knob, the house quaked, and house creaked ominously, as if warning her from opening the door. But with one deep breath, Jenna twisted the handle. What awaited her on the other side? The door creaked open, a raspy sound that echoed through the stillness of the attic. Jenna's breath hitched as she peered inside, her eyes adjusting to the dim light filtering through a single dirty window. Dust motes danced like trapped souls in the air, swirling around her as she hesitated. "Mommy, please," Emma pleaded from behind her, her voice small and scared. The little girl clutched Jenna's leg, her nails biting into her flesh, grounding her to reality. "Just a peek," Jenna whispered, mostly to herself, as she stepped inside. The attic loomed larger than she imagined, cluttered with old boxes, furniture draped in white sheets, and a cheery but tattered rug that had once been vibrant. Each sound, the rustle of fabric and the creaking of floorboards, felt like a hidden threat. Jenna's heart raced as she moved deeper into the gloom, calling out softly, "Tyler." There was no immediate reply, just the oppressive silence of the house. Then, faintly, the laughter echoed again. It was unmistakably Tyler's. Jenna's stomach twisted. "Tyler!" she cried out, the word caught in her throat as a chill swept through the attic. Her gaze flicked to a large trunk propped against the wall. It was old, the kind that carried secrets, its rusty latch begging to be opened. Jenna's throat dried up as she approached, the laughter fading into stifling whispers, tugging at her mind. "Is this where you are?" she asked softly, her fingers gently grazing the trunk's surface. "Mommy?" Emma's urgent whisper cut through her trucking thoughts, snapping Jenna back to the moment. "The man, he wants to take me." Color drained from Jenna's face.
"What man, Emma?" Panic rose in her chest, sharp and tangible. She turned to her daughter, whose wide eyes seemed to draw back at an unseen horror. "I don't want to be here," Emma whimpered. It was then Jenna noticed the shadows shifting again, slithering across the walls, molding into ominous shapes. Each silhouette cast a belief, witnessing something, waiting. Fear coiled tighter around her heart. "Hold on to me," Jenna demanded, pulling Emma closer. She forced herself to return to the trunk, her instincts battling against the compulsion to flee. With quick and jerky movements, she wrestled the latch open. The trunk swung open with a bone-chilling creak that echoed the unease coursing through her. Inside lay dusty clothes, old toys, and crumpled photographs, but at the bottom something caught her eye, a small red notebook, its cover faded but tension imprinted deeply within the pages. It could hold clues. Jenna reached in, fingers trembling, when suddenly the laughter erupted louder, an ecstatic sound echoing in fury as shadows leaped to life around her. "Mommy, run!" Emma screamed, yanking at Jenna's leg with all her strength, pulling her back as if she sensed the danger that Jenna could not yet see. Jenna, heart racing, glanced back at the open trunk. Wait, what isn't here? But even she couldn't explain the gnawing dread creeping up her spine. A deep growl, inhuman and menacing, rumbled from above. "Mommy," Emma cried again, her small hands clutching Jenna's waist as the shadows thickened, swirling into chaotic shapes, threatening to engulf them. Jenna's instincts screamed in contradiction. They needed to leave. She backed away slowly, holding Emma tightly, but the diary slipped from her fingers, thudding into the trunk. With one last look at the trunk's dark depths, Jenna turned, darting for the attic door. By some stroke of malicious fate, the door slammed shut just as they reached for it. "What?" A breathless whisper escaped her lips. The shadows roared around them, a cacophony of chaos and despair. Jenna swallowed hard, forcing herself to yank on the knob, locked tight, unwilling to let them escape. "We need to hide," Emma cried, pointing toward a small gap between stacks of boxes. Without thinking, Jenna dashed toward it, squeezing through the narrow opening with Emma pressed against her. The chaos erupted behind them, and the shadows roared louder than ever. In that moment, as they nestled into the cramped darkness, Jenna's mind whirled. What waited for them outside the small sanctuary, and what had she inadvertently let loose by opening that trunk? A heavy silence fell, tension thick enough to cut. Then, from beyond the shadows, a solitary voice whispered, "Stay with us." Jenna stiffened, realization crashing like ice water. "Who is us?" she breathed. But there was no answer, just an electric pulse of fear strumming through the air, growing closer and more insistent. What kind of presence had they awakened?
Jenna pressed her back against the cold wooden boards, every nerve in her body tingling with alarm. Emma's small frame quivered beside her. The little girl was nearly inaudible as she whispered, "Mommy, I'm scared." The shadows outside their cramped refuge twisted, seemingly alive, colliding against boxes and sending dust into frenzied spirals. A deep sigh echoed through the attic, like a heavy weight settling in. It wrapped around Jenna, constricting her breath. She turned to Emma, whose eyes mirrored the essence of raw terror, wide and gleaming. "Shh," Jenna whispered, cradling Emma's face in her trembling hands. "I need you to listen to me. We have to stay quiet, okay?" Emma nodded, but her resolve looked fragile, a mere flicker against the storm surrounding them. The whispering grew louder, a cacophony of voices rising and falling in an eerie chant. "Stay with us, stay with us." The words echoed around them, slithering into her ears and wrapping around her mind, making the edges of her sanity fray. Jenna squeezed her eyes shut for a moment, fighting the encroaching doubt. They couldn't stay here. They had to fight. She had to protect Emma. Suddenly, a violent crash reverberated from the trunk. It snarled open as if something within had been jolted awake. Jenna's heart stumbled, catching in her throat. If the trunk unleashed whatever lurked inside, they were done for. The whispers transformed, morphing into frantic laughter that pierced through the darkness. Tyler's laugh, rising with an unnerving pitch, shattered Jenna's heart. "Tyler, where are you?" she cried, the urgency of her voice rising above the cacophony. But all that answered her was the scuttling of what sounded like claws against wood, and the laughter transformed into a sing-song refrain, taunting her. "Mommy, I want my brother," Emma whimpered, tears streaming down her cheeks. Jenna wrapped an arm around her protectively, but her own fear threatened to consume her. With every moment that passed, the shadows crept closer, the air thicker, pressing like a foot across her chest. The voices became desperate, shifting from the enticing invitations to raw demands. "Join us. Stay with us." "Emma, we have to go, now," Jenna said, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Bracing herself, she moved back toward the gap they had squeezed through. But before they could get far, the attic light flickered violently, provoking unsuspecting panic. Another deep growl emanated from a corner, rumbling through the wood and vibrating in Jenna's bones. In the flickering light, Jenna glimpsed a figure, a shadowy outline that stood far too tall. Its features were obscured, but the emptiness where its eyes should have been felt like a dark void that threatened to swallow everything. "You've come to play," it rasped, crackling like firewood splintering in the heat. A surge of primal fear twisted in Jenna's stomach as she clenched Emma to her. "Run!" She shouted, pushing Emma ahead of her as she forced herself through the narrow passage. They stumbled into an overturned lamp, sending it crashing down. It shattered with a sound that broke the air thick with threat. Jenna heard the creature roar, slicing through the ether. "You can't leave!" Without waiting, they bolted toward a distant stairway, hands flailing against the walls for balance. But the house seemed alive, shifting and constricting around them. Jenna's feet felt heavy as she reached the steps.
Each creak underfoot echoed like a countdown. "Mommy, I don't want to," Emma cried, pulling back with raw resistance. Jenna turned to her daughter, panic straining her voice. "You have to trust me!" Just then, the shadows surged, moving with a hunger, rolling toward them with a deafening swell. The laughter morphed into screams, filling every inch of the air around them. "Go!" Jenna screamed. But as they reached the top of the stairs, the world lurched. All light vanished in an instant, leaving nothing but suffocating darkness. The laughter faded to sulking whispers, wrapping around them like chains. "What is this place?" Emma whimpered. Before Jenna could respond, the abyss of darkness responded. "Your home forever." The ground beneath them trembled, echoing the promise of nightmares. Jenna's fear spiked. She squeezed Emma's hand tighter. "We won't stay!" The tension snapped, and she pulled her daughter forward. But just as they moved, flashes of faces emerged from the void, grinning, their eyes hollow and wide. They blurred together, whispering secrets of loss, pain, and unfulfilled wishes. "Stay with us." Jenna's breath hitched. "Emma, we have to find a way." But in the eerie silence that followed, she wondered, was there even a way out? Were they already lost? In that suffocating darkness, a new voice cut through, softer and sorrowful. "Mommy, don't leave me." Something was wrong. The heartbeat of fear drummed loudly in her ears as Jenna realized the shadows were not just shadows. They were memories encasing everyone that had ever lingered here, and now they wanted more. What was the truth behind that trunk? What had it awakened? And would they survive long enough to uncover it, or would they join the chorus of lost voices? Jenna felt the weight of the darkness pressing down on her, the suffocating void thickening as fear twisted in her stomach. She gripped Emma's hand tighter, forcing herself to breathe slowly. "We're going to find the light," she murmured, but doubt clung to her words and smoke. The shadows writhed around them, whispers curling their way into her mind, dragging her thoughts down a labyrinth of despair. She could almost see their grotesque, smiling faces reaching out from the dark. "Stay with us," they'd implore, their voices echoing, simultaneously seductive and menacing. "Mommy," Emma's small voice broke through the murky uncertainty. Jenna turned to her, panic flashing across her face.
"We need to keep moving, honey. Follow me." In the oppressive silence that engulfed them, a distant sound clawed through the air, a soft, rhythmic tapping on the wooden floor, like fingernails scratching. Jenna's heart raced. The sound was too familiar. "Tyler," she gasped, a fresh wave of desperation crashing over her. But she felt Emma shaking beside her, almost doubling over with fear. "Don't leave me." Jenna shook her head, knowing the shadows would inch closer if they lingered. "I won't, I promise, but we have to get to the stairs." Together they stumbled blindly, dragging their feet through the thick darkness. Every step felt like an eternity. Suddenly, a chilling blast of cold air swept through the attic, and Jenna froze. The shadows screamed in frenzy, uncoiling around her like a snake about to strike. A ghostly voice hissed from the depths of the dark. "You go, others stay behind." "Not my children," Jenna shouted defiantly, her voice ringing out against the oppressive sound of laughter that swirled like a vortex around them. The mocking echoed through the void, engulfing her spirit in terror. "Mommy, I can't breathe," Emma's plea punctured through, sending alarm straight to Jenna's heart. She bent down, drawing her daughter close. "We're almost there. Just a little more." With newfound determination, Jenna drove herself forward, eyes straining against the darkness. As they neared the edge, a flicker of light sparkled at the outer fringes of her vision, the first glimmer of hope in this malevolent abyss. But as they reached for it, something jolted into her from the shadows, thick as a fog. A hoarse whisper slithered past her ear, chilling her to the core. "Are you ready to play?" The ground heaved beneath them, and Jenna stumbled, falling to her knees with Emma in her arms. "No, no, no!" Panic surged again, her heart pounding as she scrambled up, dragging Emma with her. In that moment, the tapping stopped. The warm light danced just out of reach, intoxicating and promising safety. But before she could grasp it, the shadows pulsed angrily. "You cannot leave!" they screamed, voices colliding and writhing through the air, each one soaked in heartbreak and anguish. "Mommy!" Emma cried, terror plain on her face.
The shadows spiraled, curling tighter around them, and Jenna could feel the cold seep through her skin. "Hold on, Emma! Just hold on to me!" Jenna shouted, and they rushed for the light, arms outstretched, hearts racing. Suddenly, in a sweeping motion, the light flickered out, plunging them back into darkness, and every whisper turned into a roar. "Join us! Stay with us!" Panic surged anew. Jenna felt the knot of despair clenching tighter in her chest, drowning out everything. This was not just a struggle to escape, it was a fight for their very souls. "Emma, I won't let them take you, I swear!" Jenna screamed, squeezing her daughter's hand as they plunged deeper into the shadows.
But amid the chaos, something else stirred, a soft chuckle that rang out chillingly close. "What will you sacrifice to keep your child?" it sneered. Jenna faltered. A chilling thought rushed into her mind, freezing her blood. Was the answer hidden in the trunk they had fled? Had they awakened something more than mere shadows? As the darkness thickened, pulling at the edges of their sanity, she knew one thing: the battle was far from over. Would they discover the secrets that breathed within the trunk, or would they surrender to the darkness like so many before? Just as Jenna's resolve began to shatter, a haunting voice called out her name. Tyler's voice. "Mommy, where are you?" And in that moment, doubt surged through her. Would saving one child cost the other? The shadows laughed once more, mocking them as the air around them thickened with anticipation. Jenna gripped Emma's hand tighter, her heart racing as Tyler's voice curled around them, pulling at the threads of her sanity. "Tyler!" she shouted, spinning in circles, searching for the origin of the haunting call. Each echo felt like a dagger, piercing deeper. "Mommy!" The call came again, this time laced with desperation. Jenna glanced at Emma, her daughter's wide eyes reflecting terror. "Stay close, sweetheart. I need to find your brother," Jenna whispered, her own uncertainty masking the urgency in her tone. As shadows twisted and twisted, they seemed to conspire, blocking any path toward that voice, their whispers insistent and dark. "Come on, this way," Jenna steered Emma, pushing through the dense air, each step heavy and slow. What had once been mere darkness felt alive, as if it were wrapping around them, squeezing tighter with every movement. The shadows grew thick enough to clod her skin, sending an icy chill down her spine. "A sacrifice must be made," said a voice that dripped with malice, creeping along the walls and seeping into her mind. "You know what to do." "Shut up!" Jenna screamed, her vision narrowing. The shadows seemed to laugh, the sound vibrating through her bones. She pressed forward, refusing to succumb to their tricks. "Mommy, I don't like this game," Emma cried, her voice cracking. "The game is real," the voices hissed, speaking as one. "Think of your choice, Jenna. What are you willing to give?" "Stop!" Jenna screamed back, her breaths coming out in jagged gasps. They needed to find Tyler. Anything else felt too horrific to consider. The thicker shadows whispered promises of ruin, temptations of despair and loss slithering through her thoughts like a poisonous snake. Just then, her foot caught on something hard, toppling her to the ground. She gasped as she fell into the dark, and Emma landed beside her, wide-eyed, shaken. "Are we going to die here?" Emma whimpered, peering up into the dark. "No!" Jenna shouted, her voice fierce despite the panic churning in her stomach. "We will not die here." But the shadows encircled them, the weight of despair pushing down harder. They were losing time. "We have to move!" Jenna pulled Emma up, heart hammering. She needed to find Tyler. "Mommy, the trunk," Emma stuttered, glancing back toward a faint glow peeking through the darkness. The trunk! That cursed thing they had fled from. A chill ran down Jenna's spine. Was it calling to them? "Don't look at it!" Jenna screamed, but it was too late. The glow began to pulse, flickering like a heartbeat. The shadows around them cackled with exhilaration, encouraging them forward, urging them into its claustrophobic embrace. As Jenna inched toward the trunk, the air shimmered. A wretched thought clawed at her mind. What if the trunk holds the key? But the price could be too high. They stumbled closer, the trunk morphing before their eyes, its surface slashed with inky marks. The whispers crescendoed, the voices intertwining, until they formed a nightmarish chorus. "Choose, choose now!" "Emma," Jenna's voice trembled as she turned to her daughter, "what if we have to give something up?"
The darkness roared, drowning her thoughts. The trunk, pulsing like a wounded heart, demanded their attention. Jenna felt the walls closing in, and the laughter of shadows snaked around her neck like a noose. With desperation clawing at her insides, Jenna reached for the trunk. The moment her fingers brushed against the cool wood, a jolt shot through her body. The shadows fell silent. The air felt electric, pressing against her like a storm just waiting to break. Then, from the depths of the trunk, a low, resonant voice echoed, smooth and seductive. "Prepare to sacrifice." Jenna's breath quickened. This was just the beginning. What horrifying choice lay ahead? What else awaited in the darkness they were so desperate to escape? "Mommy!" Emma's voice broke through the thick hush, pulling Jenna's focus back to her child. What would she choose? Jenna looked at Emma, torn between dread and defensive love. The future hung precariously, and a chilling question lurked just out of reach. What would it take to save them both? In that moment of silence, the shadows stilled, holding their breath for her decision. The moment Jenna's fingers touched the trunk, the shadows around her seemed to gasp, inhaling the tense air thick with uncertainty. A cold shiver swept through her, matching the primal fear reflected in Emma's eyes. The voice from within the trunk beckoned, low, smooth, and dripping with dark allure. "What will you sacrifice, Jenna?" "What do you want?" Jenna's voice trembled, half a plea, half a challenge. The shadows shifted, swirling around her, as if answering her question. "Your will to live? Your child? Or perhaps something precious from your heart?" The voice purred with a chilling intensity. Jenna recoiled. The idea of losing Emma, the thought of sacrificing anything at all, twisted her insides into knots. "Don't listen to it, Mommy."
"Emma!" cried, tugging at her arm, her small fingers trembling against Jenna's skin. The pain in Emma's voice ignited a fire within Jenna. She knew she wouldn't part with her daughter, not for any twisted bargain. "It's lying!" Jenna shouted, her mind racing. "We can get out of this! Just hold my hand and stick with me." But the shadows began to writhe, coiling tighter around her. Their whispers became an insistent roar, each voice melding into one overwhelming presence that pressed upon her, threatening to crush her resolve. "Make the choice, Jenna, or lose them both." Every pulse of the trunk sent spikes of terror through her, reality warping in dizzying circles. No! She had to focus. Someone was trapped in here. Tyler. He needed her. "Mommy, I'm scared," Emma sobbed, her small body shaking beside her. Jenna fought against the rising tide of panic. "We will not be trapped. We're leaving." She turned away from the trunk, pulling Emma along as she pushed deeper into the darkness. But the shadows clung to them, wrapping around their limbs like a misty prison. "Where are you going?" the voice hissed with a cruel delight. "You think you can escape? The choice has been made." Suddenly, the darkness flickered, and Jenna caught a glimpse of something, a smudge of light where she had not seen one before. Hope flared briefly. "That way!" She led Emma, their feet thudding against the ground, now slick with an otherworldly grime. "Tyler!" Jenna yelled, her voice piercing through the suffocating shadows. "Can you hear me?" Silence answered, but the hope ignited a fierce determination. They stumbled through the darkness, heart racing, pulse pounding like a drumbeat of dread. Jenna felt her breath quicken, each inhale tasting of fear. Panic gnawed at the edges of her mind, but she refused to yield. Then another echo broke through, the faint, desperate cry of her son. "Mom, help me!" "Tyler!" Jenna screamed, lunging forward. The shadows trembled, snapping at their heels, the air around them humming with an eerie malevolence. "Mommy!" Emma shouted, her grip tightening with every heartbeat. "I won't, I promise," Jenna gasped, heart racing. They forced through the darkness, starlight flickering in and out like a dying ember. Just a little further, but the shadows were relentless, wrapping around them, clawing at their fragile sense of hope. Compromise, sacrifice, or lose everything. "No," Jenna cried, refusing to back down. This lesson in horror had already taken enough from her. Suddenly, lights burst forward, illuminating Tyler's figure trapped within a cocoon of shadows.
He was there, but not alone. A figure loomed behind him, nebulous and distorted, whispering shadows that seemed to pull at his essence. The very sight ripped its skin deep in Jenna's heart. "Tyler!" she called, feeling desperation clawed her throat. "Hold on!"
And then, as if sensing the shift of attention, the towering figure turned to her, its face obscured by swirling darkness. A voice like grinding stone emanated, echoing, reverberating through the air. "A bargain must be struck. What will you give for your child?" In a split second, Jenna's mind surged with thoughts, but she wouldn't allow that figure to control her. "Tyler!" Jenna yelled, realizing the single choice she had, the only thread she could cling to. "I will trade my life for his! Let him go!" The shadows shuddered at her declaration, a moment of stillness settling in the air. But then, a chuckle resounded like thunder, and the darkness tightened its grip. "You think this is a fair trade?" "Then what do you want?" Jenna's eyes blazed with defiance, rooted to the spot, a mother's fury igniting within her. "Everything," said the figure, its voice dripping with malice. Jenna felt the ground rumble beneath her feet, the trunks of the trees around them thrumming with dark energy. In that moment, the weight of choice hung heavily over her again. What was she willing to lose? As she struggled with her answer, ice seeped into her veins, and the shadows whispered so enticingly. In that heartbeat, the walls began to tremble, and Jenna realized that whatever she chose, it wouldn't only affect her. It had already ensnared Emma and Tyler, and it yearned for more. "Jenna," the shadows said softly, almost sweetly, "what will you sacrifice?" The pulse of the night quickened, and no matter how hard she fought to resist, Jenna knew the answer loomed closer, lurking just behind her sanity. And then the shadows started to stir, ready to turn her greatest fear into a reality. The shadows quivered, alive and malicious, wrapping around Jenna like an icy embrace. Her heart thudded against her chest, each beat echoing the dread that whispered through the air. Everything felt heavy, the weight of desperation pressing down on her like a leaden shroud. "Jenna, please!" Tyler's voice sliced through her thoughts, a desperate plea that sharpened her focus. The creature behind him was impossibly tall, its features a blur of nightmarish shapes that twisted and turned like a living shadow. As Jenna met its eyes, if they could be called eyes, she felt her very soul quiver beneath their gaze. "What will you give?" the figure rasped, its voice dripping with darkness, tantalizingly slow as if savoring her struggle. I won't lose my children," Jenna spat, defiance laced within her fear. But as she spoke, the shadows seemed to chuckle, a deep, rumbling laugh that resonated through the sprawling dark. "You already have," it hissed, its tone laced with malice. Jenna's breath came shallower as she turned her gaze back to her son, his face partially obscured, cheeks glistening with tears. The shadows flickered around Tyler, pulling at him, tugging him toward the dark entity that craved more than just a soul. This was a trap designed to ensnare her heart. "Mommy, I don't want to stay here," he cried, his voice breaking with a mixture of fear and pleading. Jenna's eyes burned with unshed tears. She would do anything to protect him, to spare Emma the anguish of losing a brother, wouldn't she? "Leave him alone," she yelled, her voice hoarse against the mounting dread. Yet inside, the agonizing choice gnawed at her. Every moment spent battling the shadows felt like a crack splintering deeper into her resolve. The weight of the trunk's malevolent energy felt suffocating. "You must decide now," the voice sang, almost mockingly. What will you lose?" Jenna's composure faltered for a moment. Would the price be worth it? She gripped Emma's small hand tighter, anchoring herself against the cold drag of despair. "I'll give you my memories," she declared. The words felt hollow even as they escaped her lips. The figure leaned closer, darkness swirling around it and eager anticipation. "Your memories? Whispers of joy? The essence of your being? A poor offering." The shadows recoiled slightly, the air thickening with dread. "No," Jenna cried, realizing she had stepped too far. "I'll give you anything, but you will not take my children." Suddenly, a tremor rippled through the shadows, as if her desperation shook the very fabric of their darkness. "Such defiance," it purred, the voice low and deadly. "But can you truly protect them from the price of your arrogance?" Cracks began to form in the ground, fissures that oozed shadow like oil, creeping toward Jenna and Emma. It felt as if the very earth was trying to devour them whole.
"Run!" she shouted, pulling Emma closer, scanning for any flicker of light amidst this creeping void. "Where?" Emma whimpered, glancing behind them, where Tyler remained ensnared, crying but silent against the dark. "Anywhere but here." Jenna's heart raced, panic bubbling. If she could just reach him, but as she looked back, the shadows wove tighter around Tyler, cutting him off like a veil of night. Just then, the ground lurched violently beneath her, tossing them off balance. Jenna dropped to her knees, holding Emma against her chest, shielding her from the encroaching terror. "No!" she screamed, the sound echoing fiercely against the anguish of the night. "Your son is mine," the figure hissed, the shadows intensifying, tenebrous fingers stretching toward Tyler. Jenna felt a desperate pulse of power swell within her, the desire to reach him, to pull him from the embrace of darkness. "Stop!" she roared, her voice rising with unnatural intensity. "You want a sacrifice? Then let it be me." Silence fell, the shadows freezing momentarily, all eyes, if they could be called eyes, now on her. The air thickened with anticipation as the dark entity contemplated her offer.
Then, with a roar that shuddered the very foundation of the ground, it surged forward. Jenna's mind raced, the choice now so desperate she could hardly breathe. What if her resolve made things worse? In that heart-pounding moment, Jenna had to make her final stand, and the echoes of the shadows whispered in her ears, taunting her, begging her to lose herself to madness. "In the end, what will you truly sacrifice?" they taunted, the truth buried beneath their chilling tease. And with that, the darkness surged ahead, ready to consume everything in its path. As the shadows closed in, Jenna was left with one harrowing thought. What if the true cost of salvation was becoming the very thing she feared the most? The ground trembled ominously, and a flash of blinding light split through the darkness. The light exploded around Jenna, a searing brilliance that contrasted sharply with the oppressive darkness. It cut through the tendrils of shadow like a knife, causing them to writhe and retreat momentarily. In that split second, a flicker of hope surged within her, urging her towards Tyler. "Tyler!" she shouted, scrambling to her feet. The warmth of the light enveloped her, granting her fleeting strength. She sprinted toward him, each step filled with the weight of every desperate plea she had ever made. But as she reached him, the shadows recoiled, their laughter echoing in her mind. Suddenly, they surged back, enveloping Tyler tighter, as if punishing his audacity to remain unclaimed. Jenna's heart sank, a fresh wave of dread threatening to drown her resolve. "No!" she screamed, extending her arms toward her son, willing the darkness to part. "Mommy!" Tyler's voice was faint, muffled by the shadows pressing in. She could barely see him through the creeping black, just the glisten of fear in his wide, tear-filled eyes. Desperation clawed at Jenna's throat. Her instincts screamed at her to act. "Please," she whimpered, but her voice was lost in the ever-thickening gloom. The figure lurked just behind, its presence an ink-black weight that dared her to surrender. "You've already given," it murmured, the words a chilling caress against her ear. "What more, Jenna? What are you willing to pay?" As it spoke, the shadows began to weave between her and Tyler, forming a wall that rippled with dark energy. Jenna felt a tremor deep within her. "You think you can take my memories? Take my will?" she roared, a blaze of defiance igniting within her. "Try!" She lunged forward again, breathless, driven by an instinct deeper than fear. As her hands reached for Tyler, the ground buckled beneath her, urging her to collapse. She fought against the tremors, feeling the energy of the light allowing her to push through the depths of despair. "No!" Tyler's voice broke through the chaos, real, sharp, filled with urgency. "Mommy, don't!" The shadows twisted with laughter as they tightened around him. "See?" "He knows your sacrifice will never be enough," hissed the figure, delight in its voice. "You are weak, Jenna. A mother's love isn't strong enough to save him." But she would not yield. In that moment, she realized it wasn't just her memories at stake, it was her very essence. "I may be weak, but I refuse to let you take him," Jenna shouted, her voice now fierce, her heart pounding like thunder in her chest. Gathering every ounce of light within her, she extended her arms wide, feeling the radiant energy coursing through her, tangible yet fragile. "I choose love. I choose to fight." And in that declaration, the ground shook violently, cracks spidering outward. The light pulsed fiercely, a living force that pushed against the darkness. Then, just as suddenly, everything froze. In that heart-stopping silence,
Tyler looked at her, his eyes wider than ever, reflecting both fear and a hint of faith. "Mommy?" he breathed. But the shadows stirred ominously, the entity's laughter echoing through the void. "Love? A quaint notion, but it won't save you." It began to stretch forward, ready to absorb their luminescence as the earth shifted beneath them. "No!" Jenna shouted, panic igniting anew. "I won't let you take him!" With a scream, she directed all her energy, pouring it into a shimmering column of light streaming from her heart. The shadows recoiled, their laughter dimming as if afraid of the very thing consuming them. "Do not test me," the creature warned, malevolence swirling like a tempest. Jenna's resolve hardened. "You've underestimated what love can do. This ends now." And just like that, the ground erupted, a blinding burst of light colliding with the darkness, sending ripples of energy through the air as the entity howled in fury. But in the chaos, the shadows began to claw back, a force thrusting towards Tyler, wrapping around him one last time before Jenna could break the spell. The light pulsed dangerously, and the air thickened, crackling with tension. "Mommy!" Tyler screamed, his voice reaching a desperate pitch. The world around them became a dance of shadows fighting against the radiance of her love, and Jenna felt time slow. In that desperate stillness, as her energy waned, she knew she was facing the ultimate choice. Would she sacrifice herself to save her children? With every ounce of her being, she prepared for the final confrontation. But suddenly, an unexpected laugh echoed through the thrumming chaos, a sound that rippled with dark promise. "You think this is the end?" And with that, the shadows surged once more, pulling her into the blackness as the ground beneath her began to open. And in that terrifying split second, Jenna's thoughts blurred into an impossible question. Who would survive this eternal night? The ground cracked beneath Jenna's feet, a terrible yawning chasm gaping wide, threatening to swallow everything she held dear. "No!"
she shouted, her voice firm with desperation. But as the shadows closed in, she felt the suffocating grip of darkness clawing relentlessly at her heart. "Tyler! Emma!" she cried out, their names a desperate mantra, an invocation of strength in the face of overwhelming dread. The shadows surged again, a wave of despair, but Jenna could practically feel the heat of the light she summoned within her. It flickered and pulsed, fragile but unyielding, and it spurred her into action. "Together!" she urged, grasping Emma's hand tightly while trying to pull Tyler back out of the relentless black. "We fight together!" "What about the price?" Tyler's voice trembled, filled with uncertainty. "Mommy, what will we lose?" Jenna could barely breathe, the specter of sacrifice hovering overhead like a dark cloud. "We won't lose anything. Love will prevail," she insisted, even as doubts gnawed at her mind. Could love truly conquer the darkness? Would it protect her children? The figure loomed closer, shadows swirling in discontent at her defiance. "Such blind hope," it crooned, but Jenna refused to let it penetrate her resolve. She felt the vibrations of another tremor beneath her. "We are stronger than you think!" With fierce determination, she pushed forward, her heart racing, drawing the light from deep within her, the memories of laughter, warmth, and unconditional love she had built with her family. "Mom!" Emma tugged at her. "What if it takes you?" "I'm not afraid!" Jenna shouted, surprising even herself with the ferocity of her words. "This ends now! I will lay down my life if it means I can save you both!" With a primal roar, she charged forward into the heart of the darkness, reaching for the flicker of her son, pulling him back from the abyss. The shadows writhed and screamed as she drew closer, but she wouldn't be deterred. "Let him go!" Jenna demanded, her voice cutting through the cacophony. "You want a sacrifice? Take me!" She could feel the weight of the entity's scrutiny. Its greed clawed at her spirit, demanding her submission. "Your sacrifice will not save them," it hissed, dark and dripping with cruelty. The shadows loomed around Jenna, threatening to cradle her in despair and snuff out her light. "You'll lose everything!" "No!" she shouted, pushing every ounce of fury into her voice. "I'll lose nothing if I still stand in love!" With one final push, she forced her light forward like a spear. It pierced through the swirling darkness, illuminating the attic with splendor, scattering the shadows like leaves in a storm. "Tyler! Emma! Now!" she cried, her voice ringing clear over the din.
The energy burst downward, light breaking free, and they stumbled toward it, hand in hand, hearts racing. As they reached the fractured threshold, warm light filled the space, wrapping around their bodies like a comforting embrace. The shadows shrieked, their cries filled with rage as they pulsed back, fracturing and collapsing under the force of the radiance.
Mommy! Tyler's face broke into a smile, hope igniting his eyes. Hold on tight, Jenna called, pulling Emma and Tyler to her side. Together they surged into the light, past the tendrils of darkness that struggled in desperation. In that flash, darkness and light clashed, erupting into a brilliant explosion that reverberated through the silence of the night. Just like that, they broke through. With a final gasp, Jenna and her children fell onto the familiar grass, stars glimmering brightly above them, warm air brushing lightly against their skin. The shadows receded behind them, howls of anger echoing in the distance, a cacophony that faded with the dawn breaking on the horizon. They were free. Jenna collapsed to the ground, breathless. "We made it," she murmured, opening her eyes to see Tyler and Emma scrambling beside her, both kicking up blades of grass, laughter bubbling up like spring water. Relief flooded her system, rolling through like a gentle wave. But then the shadow knew how to twist the knife. "You will never be free," it whispered, the voice lingering on the edges of memory, a dark promise that echoed in her heart. "I will always fight for you," Jenna said softly, the words surprising even her. "No matter what it takes." Tyler flung his arms around her. "You're my hero, Mommy." Emma smiled, wiping a tear from her cheek. Jenna took in the warmth of her children, realizing the real treasure wasn't just surviving. It was the love they had for each other, a strength bound by blood and memories of light. As the sun rose, casting away the remnants of darkness, Jenna realized that despite the curses lurking behind her home, they had triumphed together. They took a deep, cleansing breath, inhaling the new morning air, fresh and bright, a promise of new beginnings. And as they walked hand in hand back toward their house, Jenna cast a glance back at the shadows now dormant, buried within walls that could no longer hurt them. "You will not take my family again," she shouted, full of resolve and defiance. The shadows trembled, but for now they were out of reach, because in the end, love had always been Jenna's greatest weapon. This is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will give you chills. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. You need to flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.